This video is about the uses of different types of sampling, both random and non-random. We need to be aware of the bias that may be introduced through the method of data collection and the advantages and disadvantages of each method. So firstly, I want to go through the statistical modeling cycle. So first thing that happens is in the real life is we decide on a problem that we want to investigate, which is a problem analysis. Then we use sampling techniques to collect data to investigate this. We process and present these data, finding statistical values and producing graphs and charts. And then we report and interpret this, obviously, calculations, making conclusions within the context of the problem. Depending on the outcomes, we decide if we want to reinvestigate it, and then we go through the cycle again. The first thing I want to go through is some definitions that you need to know for the sampling techniques. So first thing is population is a total set of possible values that can be selected for the sample. A sampling unit is a single member of the population. A sample is a selection of sampling units observed from the population on which analysis is to be carried out. And a sampling frame is a list of all members of a population. For example, when investigating student heights, the population is the height of each student. So it's not the students themselves, but the height of each student. The sampling unit is one single height from one student. A sample is a list of student heights for some selection of students. And the sampling frame would be the list of all students at the school. Good sampling. A good sampling is always representative of the population it is representing. So we do this via two things. We always use a large sample size. So we take a large enough sample size, then it will be more representative. And the second thing is we use an unbiased method. Now, the problem with using the bigger sample size is obviously it's more representative of the data, but increasing the size often involves more resources, so time and money. So these factors need to be balanced against one another. In general, obviously, unbiased methods should be used, but sometimes a biased method may be the only way of collecting a sample. So one way of carrying out an investigation is finding things out about population is to undertake a census. A census is where all members of the population are observed. Okay, so you don't take a sample, you just interview every member of the population. Okay, now the advantage of this is it gives a completely accurate result. Disadvantage is, undo. Disadvantage would be it's time consuming, expensive, sometimes destroys item, e.g. testing, battery life. And it's also difficult to process large amount of data, because if the population is really big, then there'll be a lot of processing to be done. The advantage is less time consuming, cheaper than obviously a census. Fewer people have to respond. And less data to process compared to a census. Disadvantage would be data may not be accurate. So due to the sampling method, it might not represent the population. The sample may not be large enough to give information about all subgroups in the population. Okay, let's go through a question to do with this. A city council wants to know what people think about its recycling centre. The council decides to carry out a sample survey to learn the opinion of results. A. Write down one reason why the council should not take a census. So any one of the disadvantages is time consuming. Or you can say expensive. Or you can say difficult to process data. B. Suggest a suitable sampling frame. So list of residents living within the council. C. Identify the sampling units. So it's each individual resident living in the council. Okay, so let's go through some sampling methods you can use. So first of all is a simple random sample. So this is an example of a random sampling technique. So in a random sampling technique, every member of the population has an equal chance of being selected in the sample. So this reduces bias. So let's see what the method of a simple random sample is. So the method is, there's 5 steps. So first step is use sampling frame to assign numbers to each member of the population. So if there are n, then number them 1 to n. Second step is use random number generator to generate integers from 1 to n. I'm just going to say use assign numbers 1 to n. Yeah. 3 is select population member corresponding to each number generated to form a sample. 4, obviously sometimes you may get repeated values, so ignore repeated values. And then stop when you have required number for sample. Now this process has obviously advantages and disadvantages. So the advantage is it's free of bias because everyone has an equal chance of being selected. Easy and cheap to implement in small sample sizes for small samples and populations. And there's an equal chance of selection. So this one is not suitable. Disadvantage would be not suitable for large sample size because it could be time consuming to sift through a lot of, if the population is very big, and it could be expensive as well. Disadvantages, obviously, because we have to list everything from 1 to n, a sampling time is required, which is obviously not always available in real life. Okay, so let's go through the questions. So the 100 members of a yacht club are listed alphabetically in the club's membership book. The committee wants to select a sample of 12 members to fill in the questionnaire. Explain how the committee could use a calculator or a random number generator to take a simple random sample of the members. So first step is allocate numbers 1 to, there's 100 members, so 1 to 100 to each member of the yacht club. Next is use either the calculator or the random number generator to generate random numbers between 1 to 100. Ignore repeated values until 12 different numbers have been selected. Go back to original population and select members corresponding to these 12 numbers. And that would be it. Note, do not pick from hat, as this is very time consuming. So in reality, we don't want to do that. A random number generator is always an easier way to select random numbers. Okay, next type of sampling is stratified sampling. So in stratified sampling, the population, so the population is divided into mutually exclusive strata, we call it, which is groups. So e.g. male, female, and a random sample is taken from each strata. This makes it more representative. So a more representative sample is generated in this way. So the formula is number sampled in stratum is equal to number in stratum over number in population times by sample size. Again, the number sampled in stratum is equal to number in stratum divided by number in population times by sample size. Now you need to know the advantages and disadvantages of the stratified sampling. So the advantage is sample accurately reflects patterns in population because it's been divided into subgroups, and is a more proportional representation of groups within the population. Disadvantages is that the population has to be clearly classified into distinct stratas. That's how you spell distinct. Okay, into distinct strata. And because obviously we still need to use a simple random sample within each strata, if still a sampling frame is needed. So it still has the same disadvantage as a simple random sample. And also if it's really big, the population size is really big, it's going to be really time consuming, it's going to be expensive and so on. Okay, let's go through a question. So factory manager wants to find out what his workers think about the factory canteen facilities. The manager decides to give the questionnaire to a sample of 80 workers. It is thought that different age groups will have different opinions. So 75 workers between 18 and 32, 140 between 33 and 47, 85 between 48 and 62. Write down the name of the method of sampling the manager should use. Because we can see it's been divided into distinct groups, then we know straight away it's a stratified sampling method. Part B, explain how we could use this method to select a sample of workers' opinion. So first thing we need to do is work out how many from each sample. So from the age group 18 to 32, we know there's 75 out of the total, which is 75 plus 140 plus 85, that's a total, times by the sample size, which is 80, will give us how many workers we need from the 18 to 32 subgroup. So we get 20 workers when we put that into our calculator. From the 33 to 47 category, we've got 140 of them are 33 to 47 out of a total of 75 plus 140 plus 85, and to times it by the sample size to give me how many people I need in the sample. So that gives me 37 and a third. Because it's not a whole number, I round it to the nearest whole number, which is 37 workers. And for the subgroup 48 to 62, the total number of workers is 85 out of altogether 75 plus 140 plus 85, times by the sample size, which gives me 22 and 2/3, which when rounded is 23 workers. So these are the number from each subgroup that I need for the sample. Then what we need to do is number each worker within each age group separately. Okay, use calculator or random number generator to produce required number of random numbers from each age group. Ignore repeated values within each age group. So they can repeat in different age groups, but not in the same one. And then you give survey to worker corresponding to the random numbers generated within each age group. Okay, next question. Head of Sixth Form wants to get the opinion of Year 12 and Year 13 students about the facilities available in the common room. The table shows the number of students in each year. Suggest a suitable sampling method that might be used to take a sample of 40 students. Again, straight away you can see it's been divided into subgroups, male, female, Year 12, Year 13. So that means it is a stratified sampling method. B. How many students from each gender in each of the 2 years should the head of Sixth Form ask? So first one is Year 12 male. It will be 70 over the total, which is 70 plus 50 plus 85 plus 75, times by the sample size, which is 40, which is equal to exactly 10. Okay, so Year 13 male now will be 50 over 70 plus 50 plus 85 plus 75 times by 40, which is equal to 7.14285 blah blah blah, which is rounded down to 7. Year 12 female would be 85 over 70 plus 50 plus 85 plus 75, which is the total, times by the sample size, which is 40, which gives me 12.14285 blah blah blah, which rounds down to 12. And the last one I need to do is year 13 female. So what is the amount of the year 13 female? It's 75 out of the total population, which is 70 plus 50 plus 85 plus 75, times by the sample size, which is 40, which gives me 10.71428 blah blah blah, which rounds up to 11. So just to do a check, let's add the numbers. 10 plus 7 plus 12 plus 11. It does equal 40, which is the sample size that we wanted, so it does work out. It's always round. Sometimes you might get an extra one, just take one of them off because you want it to be equal to the sample size at the end. Okay, a director of a sports club wants to take a sample of members. The members each have a unique membership number. There are 121 members who play cricket, 145 members who play hockey, and 104 members who play squash. No members play more than one sport. Explain how the director could take a simple random sample of 30 members and state one disadvantage of this sampling method. Okay, first thing, because obviously we're going to use a random sample, we need to set up a sampling frame. Set up a sampling frame, then number each member of the sports club, and then use a random number generator to select 30 members. Disadvantage: it might not be, so may not be representative of all the sports played at the sports club, because you might end up with all the members in the sample playing, for example, cricket. Directors decide to take a stratified sample of 30 members. State one advantage of the method of sampling. So because it's stratified sample. So because it's stratified sample, the sample will have proportional representative. Proportional representation of all the sports. Our members from all the different sports played at the club. Okay, part C, work out the number of members who play each sport that the director should select for the sample. So C, so first sport is cricket. So cricket is paid by 121 over 121 total, which is 121 plus 145 plus 104, times by the sample size, which is 30. which is equal to 9.83739 blah blah blah, which rounds to 10. Okay, second sport is hockey. Hockey is played by 145 over 120 plus 121 plus 145 plus 104 times by 30, which is equal to 11.7567 blah blah blah, which rounds to 12. And the last sport I have to go here is squash, which is 104 over 121 plus 145 plus 104 times by 30, 8.4324, which is equal to 8. And 10 plus 12 plus 8 is equal to 30, which is the required sample that we wanted. Okay, the last random sample is called a systematic sample. So members of the population are selected at random intervals. From the sampling frame. So again, a random sample needs a sampling frame. So e.g. might be from a list of obviously members of a population, you select every 10th sampling unit. The first sampling unit is chosen at random to ensure each member of the population is equally likely to be selected. E.g., if you have a sample size which is equal to, I don't know, 20, and the population is equal to 1,000 people, then 1,000 divided by 20 is equal to 50. So use random number generator to generate a random number between 1 to 50, e.g. 17. Then select every 50th after the 17th, e.g. end up getting 17th, then 67th, then 117th, and so on. What are the advantages and disadvantages of this? So advantage is it's simple, it's quick to use, and is suitable for large populations or samples. Disadvantage again, a sampling frame is needed. So if you don't have a list of everyone in the population, how are you going to take every 10th one, for example? And also it has the possibility of introducing bias, because every 10th person, for example, might be a woman. Especially if sampling frame is not random. Okay, let's go through some questions. So Jim wants to take a sample of its members. Each member has a 5-digit membership number, and the gym selects every member with a membership number ending 000. Is this a systematic sample? Give a reason for your answer. No, as a person has not been randomly selected. And the sample has not been chosen at regular intervals. So remember, in a systematic sample, it's always chosen at regular intervals. Okay, B. So just one way of improving the reliability of this sample. One way is use larger sample. Another way would be reduce bias by using a simple random sample. Sampling with a sampling frame to pick a random number and then choose the rest at regular intervals. A factory manager wants to get information about the ways the workers travel to work. There are 480 workers in the factory and each has a clocking in number. The numbers go from 1 to 480. Explain how the manager could take a systematic sample of size 30 from these workers. So we've got 480 and we've got a sample size of 30. So 480 divided by 30 is equal to 16. Use random number generator to select a number from 1 to 16. Start with this clock in worker. Then select every 16th worker after this. Okay, non-random sampling. In a quota sampling, an interviewer or researcher selects a sample that reflects the characteristics of the whole population. As an interviewer, you assess a person's group, interview them and allocate them into an appropriate quota until all quota has been filled. If the quota is full, ignore and move on to the next person. So that's what you need to do in a quota sampling. So as an interviewer, you assess person's group, interview them, and allocate into appropriate quota until all quota has been filled. So if a quota is full, ignore and move on to next person. So for example, if there are 2/3 of the population are male and 1/3 of the population are female, then if you want to take a sample of 30, you want 20 male and 10 female. So you'd give it to the first 20 male that you come across and the first 10 female that you come across. And obviously, if someone doesn't want to get interviewed, you ignore them until the quota has been filled. Opportunity sampling consists of taking the sample from people who are available at the time the study is carried out and who fit the criteria you're looking for. So, for example, e.g., this might be the first 20 people you meet outside a shopping center on a Monday morning carrying a bag of shopping. If I wanted to find out about shopping habits. Okay, but this will obviously introduce bias because I'm standing at a specific shopping center at a specific hour on a specific day, so it does affect obviously the results that I will get. Okay, next, what is the difference between quota sampling and stratified sampling? So in quota sampling, the ratio is decided by the interviewer, the researcher. And the sampling units in quota sampling is not random, whereas stratified sampling is random. What is the difference between opportunity sampling and quota sampling? Opportunity sampling does not take into account different subgroups within the population. So opportunity sampling does not take into account different subgroups within the population. And why would you ever need to use non-random sampling? So the two that we've come across, which is quota sampling and opportunity sampling, both of them do not require a sampling frame when there is no. When there is no sampling frame. So you don't know each sampling unit within your population. Let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of each one. So quota sampling allows a small sample to be representative of the population. Advantage is no sampling frame required, so you don't need to list every member of your population. So that saves time. Quick, easy, inexpensive. Disadvantage is can introduce bias. And non-responses are not recorded. Opportunity sampling is easy to carry out and inexpensive. And disadvantage would be unlikely to produce a representative sample. Okay, so let's go through some questions about this. So in a research study on the masses of wild deer in a particular habitat, scientists catch the first 5 male deer they find and the first female deer they find. What type of sampling method are they using? Because it's got groups and obviously the first few has to be selected, it must be a quota sampling because there is subgroups. We give one advantage of this method: quick, easy, inexpensive, and the main one, because it's a non-random, is no sampling frame required, which works well when you're working with obviously in the wild, because you won't have a list of all the population of how many deers there are in the wild. Okay, the masses of the sample deer are listed below. So male, female, and the masses. Use the sample data to compare the masses of male and female wild deer. So C will be the mean. For male, will be 75 plus 80 plus 90 plus 85 plus 82 divided by 5 is equal to 82.4 kg. Mean female will be equal to 67 plus 72 plus 75 plus 68 plus 65 divided by 5, 69.4 kg. These both imply male deer heavier than female, as mean is higher. Okay, range male is equal to 90 take away 75, which is 15 kg, and range for female is equal to 75 take away 65, which is equal to 10 kg. Therefore, female mass more consistent as range is lower. D, suggest 2 improvements that the scientists could make to the sampling method is increase sample size, and the second thing could be is catch deers at random time of the day rather than all at the same time. Okay, the managing director of the factory wants to know what the workers think about the factory canteen facilities. 100 people work in the offices and 200 work on the shop floor. The factory manager decides to ask the people who work in the offices. Suggest a reason why this is likely to produce a biased sample. Because the people on shop floor are not represented in this survey. B1. Explain briefly how the factory manager could select a sample of 30 workers using systematic sampling. So get a list or make a list of 300 workers. Because sample size is 30, 300 divided by 30 is equal to 10. Use a random number generator to generate a number between 1 to 10, e.g. 7. Choose the 7th person on the list, and then every 10th person after. So e.g. you get 7th, 17th, 27th, and so on. Part 2, a stratified sample. So that means 100 are to 200. So office to shop floor, the ratio is 100 to 200, which is 1 to 2, which is 1/3 to 2/3. So office workers is equal to 1/3 times 30, which is equal to 10. And shop for workers is equal to 2/3 times 30, which is equal to 20. Use random sampling to select numbers from each subgroup. Three, quota sampling. Decide the characteristic, e.g. it might be age, gender, or office, shop floor category. And set quota for each in proportion with population. Interview workers until each quota is full. So in this topic, we've gone through 3 different types of simple random sample. Random sampling, which is simple random sample, stratified sample, and systematic sample, and 2 types of non-random sampling, which is quota sampling and opportunity sampling.